Welcome to the Wild Type Podcast. I'm Lyssa Lizards.
I'm Neptune Chameleon.
And we're your reptile girlies. So we're going to be doing something very exciting coming up in May, and I've certainly been geeking out about it for the last couple weeks.
It's funny because I am 100% confident there are some of our listeners who are equally as into this. It's like a sub hobby.
Yes, which as we talked about in our recent NARBC episode, there are so many sub hobbies within the reptile hobby. And I have recently decided or learned in my 32 years of age that I can do whatever I want in life.
True.
I can do whatever I want. And I can go to a Ren fair whenever I want. A Renaissance fair.
Yes.
Not to nickname it, but...
No, people on Ren fairs. I think that's
for sure.
Yeah.
But I remember going to a Renaissance fair when I was in elementary school. We went as a field trip, which now in hindsight feels like an insane field trip.
Yeah, we just went to the zoo.
Yeah.
What?
No, I don't know why. I was
a fish farm.
I was in second grade and we went to a Ren fair. And I remember thinking, I want to do this all the time. And then I never went to one ever again.
Here are many years later.
Many years later. Not to age ourselves, but many years later. And we're going to the freaking
We're a little
Ren
older
fair.
than second grade, yes.
Just a little.
No, I'm so excited. And if it wasn't obvious, I'm also going.
She will be attending.
This is a group activity.
Yes.
But yeah, I've been to Ren fairs before, big ones, small ones. And I personally have not dressed up for a Ren fair, but I very much was in Shakespeare plays. Growing up, I've gone to multiple jousting, dinner shows.
You've lived so many lives. I didn't know that you did theater.
Medieval Nights.
Midsummer's Night's Dream.
Thank you.
Yes.
I was doing medieval times and
I was not confident.
Midsummer's Night Dream.
Yes. I was not confident in that either.
No, Midsummer's Night Dream. I did a bunch of plays in middle school, high school.
Yeah.
Fun fact, I was the stepsister in Cinderella. I had a duet. It was a whole thing.
The fact that I'm still learning these things about you,
this is
deep into our friendship
of
is
adult
crazy.
Friendship, though.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
Because you've lived
we didn't
these
grow
lives.
up together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. But we're picking out different outfits
we're
for
so excited.
Ren Fair because we're a couple weeks out at this point.
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure out what vibe you're going with. I'm maybe bow and arrow Meredith from Brave vibe.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I dressed her up as her as Halloween back when that was peak movie time.
That's also when it comes to Renaissance fairs or festivals or whatever, the accessories are everything, and a bow and arrow accessory is so cool.
Yeah. So I'm I could go that direction. Mm-hmm. You're going more fantasy.
Oh, I'm going full fairy, guys. I'm going full fairy. I'm so excited.
That's a direction you could go. I'm pirate would be cool.
Pirate's a very cool option.
Because I really want a little parrot on my shoulder.
Absolutely. Like I said, the accessories are everything.
And we have grown-up money.
And I'm so excited. I also, in my research, have found out that trinket trading is a thing.
So I just learned about this from you. I didn't know.
It's so freaking cool. People will make these cute little handmade trinkets and pass them out. And it's very, very similar. I don't know if any of our listeners are EDM rave music fans at all. I certainly am. Logan is. He was a DJ at my wedding, for God's sakes. That is so a thing.
I'm big on the music. I just haven't been to a rave. Yeah.
But at raves, people will have these little trinkets. It's not so much a trade. I think at Ren fairs, it's always a I give, you give kind of thing. At raves, it's more a, hey, I like your vibe. Here's a gift. And it's one of my favorite things. And that's where the little sprouts come from is that world is you got sprouted because somebody liked your vibe.
Yeah, we saw some at I think it was the Dallas show.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think it's Dee Dee's Plants and Pets who passes those out,
yep.
I think, which I freaking love that somebody brought that into the reptile world. It's just so special. But anywho, it's very reminiscent of that. But I think at Ren fairs, it's more handmade little stuff. So people will make all these cute little
I'm Googling this after.
And I'm so excited.
I love trinkets and I love DIY stuff. So any opportunity would be really cool.
People make keychains and little all kinds of cute stuff. And
love.
Very excited. So,
So yeah, stay tuned. We're, like I said, a couple weeks out, but I'm
Yeah.
sure once it happens, we'll like give like a debrief on.
and you'll for sure be seeing like pictures. Don't worry. I'm sure I'll post at
Yeah.
least one on my story.
My goal always is to not get sunburnt. So
That is definitely going to be a concern. Yeah,
I will be packing that in my
for sure.
backpack. Now I need a little backpack.
Yes.
To carry all my.
Yes.
I need like a piratey satchel.
Backpack. Yes.
Slouch.
Yes.
Slouch.
Yes.
Pouch. Thing.
The options are truly endless. Truly.
This is good. This
I'm
is
very
good.
excited.
So
I
yeah.
know. But anywho, couple different topics we have.
Yeah.
So we obviously talk about our nails all the time. That's like number one.
Yes.
We just, I think last episode gave you guys a hot off the presses update on our nails, but we weren't always nail girlies.
This is so true, which I find hilarious because it's
Yes.
such a big part of our
the
brand.
podcast. Yeah.
And
it's like-
honestly, our personalities, I think it was in the last episode I had commented how a coworker was like,
Yeah.
look at my nails or whatever. And like, she's like, you always have cool nails. And I was like, this is the best.
it's such a sense of pride. Like it just it brings you so much
It's
joy.
the I've made it moment. Like I've
Yes.
had cool nails long enough
Yes.
to be deemed as the cool nail person.
100%.
But to your point, like, so
Mm-hmm.
I have always been into nails, but I haven't always been into getting my nails done.
I was going to say, because you used to like DIY yours, didn't
Yes,
you?
so I was a big nail art girly.
So
So like
cool.
I had the little micro brushes
Yeah.
and I had the little
stamps,
daughters, the
yeah.
stampers. Like I had like 30 different
Mm-hmm.
colors. And even as like a kid, like 8-year-old me, my dad despised the
So
smell of
cute.
nail polish.
Yeah.
So it was like, you have to paint your nails outside. So like
Oh.
the amount of memories I have sitting on like my back patio, like painting
your nails.
Yeah. And like
Endless,
waiting
yeah.
them to, like for them to dry. And I had the wind because I was like outside and
like-
be like, yeah.
Nature, please dry my nails.
Yes, there's like those sprays you could get to like quick dry, whatever.
Oh, I remember those. That's been a minute.
Yeah.
I haven't seen
so
those
like
in a long time.
but my thing is like I would just use regular nail polish, right? And then they would end up chipping or like whatever. And so I'm like constantly having to do my nails. And I'm like, man, I spent so much time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this was pre-gel and
yeah.
all that stuff
All
you
the
can do at
options.
home. Fast forward, I still thoroughly enjoy getting my nails
Mm-hmm.
done. And I went on a trip with one of my girlfriends and we stayed with her aunt at like her beach house, whatever. And she's like, I want to go treat you guys to like get your nails
Oh,
done.
that's so nice.
And she did dip. Her like aunt did dip. And I was like, ooh, I've never done dip.
Yeah.
Because whenever I went and got my nails done, very rarely
Yeah.
it'd be like gel and it'd be like
Right.
a French. Because I'm like, French is really hard
Well, and
to
it was
do on
very
yourself.
like, I bet back in the day too, it was like the acrylics, which was like a very
Yeah.
intense thing. That
Yeah.
was
It was
a
only
whole
like for like
process.
proms or something. I would
Yeah,
like get
yeah,
my
yeah.
nails done. So I got dip for the first time and I was like,
This was everything.
now. And I had square round nails.
Oh God, my prom nails. I recently like went through my prom photos just because I was like creeping on Facebook and I was like, what do I have on here? And my prom nails were horrific. They had like almost like freaking pointy.
They were square?
Square, like too square.
That also tells you how old she was in
Yeah.
high school. Because
Yeah,
that was
it does.
that was the trend. That was the thing
was
to
the
do.
thing, yeah.
That was the thing to do. No, so I started out with like square round, which I feel like is like a
Mm-hmm.
very safe like
Totally.
entry nail option. So I got dip for a really long time. Then I started getting like an ombre or something for like my birthday.
Yeah.
And then I started getting the round almond, which I like absolutely love.
Oh, me too.
This nail shape.
I'm never going back.
Yeah. Big
You can't-
fan.
You can't get me to do anything else.
And then for the last year, I've been getting hard gel, which is like a little pricier. But like my thing with the dip was like I would smash my hand into things,
Yeah.
and I would
It would
like
chip.
not just chip. I'd like rip like whole nails
Oh,
off.
God.
Yeah, and like halfway through, like very painful. Like, and I haven't had that issue.
I'm impressed because I'm pretty hard on my hands too. But
No,
dang,
I probably ripped like 5 or 6,
Oh,
and I'm
geez.
talking like deep,
like too far.
yeah,
Yeah.
deep
Yeesh.
rips. And so like those are like you do that a few times and I have not had that issue with the hard gel.
No,
and I think
yeah.
it's just like my nails naturally are a little bit weaker.
Yeah.
And so maybe I just need a little more.
A little more oomph. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say it's been like 3 years now.
I think I'm right at about 3 years too. 'Cause
Yeah.
For me, the catalyst was
Oh yeah. So mine was summer and yours
Yeah.
would have been fall
Or, like,
late summer.
late summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it was like so first off, my mom and my sister were always huge nail girls. My whole life, my whole childhood, my mom and my sister would always go get their nails done. I would try from time to time and I was like, I don't like this. And for me, it was the upkeep issue. When I would go get them done, I wouldn't want to go get them redone. And then it was a hassle to get them taken off.
Yeah.
And so that was like my biggest hang up when I was in like high school. So I would only do it for special occasions, and I was like really picky about it. And I was also the child that my mom used to try when I was a kid to get me to sit still with nails. Never. You could not get me to sit still. I was too chaotic, too crazy. And so I would never, they would always mess up. So I just was never a nail girl. I would do it on special occasions for like you said, like prom, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then and in college I did it a little bit, but I was also still fake tanning in a bed back then. So there was a whole lot going on there. But I was, kind of experimenting here and there. But then for like a good, I would say like 8 to 10 years, I did nothing to my nails. I was like, nope, I've decided I'm a natural nail girl. I don't want to get my nails done. It's too much of a hassle. Why would I spend that money? It's dumb. Like, I don't want to do it. And that was also right around the time that I had gotten back into reptile keeping.
Right.
So at that point, I was digging in dirt all the time. I was like handling my pets all the time. I was like, why would I get my nails done? It makes no sense. And so I just was like very like against it for myself personally. I was like, it's a waste of money, waste of time. I don't want to do it. Then I was going to get engaged. And I was like, I really got to go get my nails done. And I really it's got to be good too. So one of my coworkers had a nail tech who was incredible and did like amazing nails. And that is my girl, Rosie. And so...
Tale as old as time.
Yes. And so I've had Rosie ever since. I think I started going to her in 2022. So it's been about 3 years because that's when we got engaged, was October 2022.
Yeah.
So.
And you were in a unique position for your engagement. You were given like a window from, right? Like a couple months.
I wasn't given a window, but I was given we had gone on like a family trip, and he had told me that he was going to like talk to my dad at some point, which that was something that meant a lot to me personally. And so he had told me that was going to happen. So he had just kind of said, like, from this point forward, you should probably get your nails done. And he was like, it could be a year from now, but you should be getting your nails done. And I was like, okay. And from that point when he told me, I think it was about 4 to 5 months after that. So I was kind of given a window, but it was like an indefinite window. I was like,
yeah, I remember. I don't know. Maybe I'm confusing like friends, but I thought I would like you were like sometime in fall. Like, didn't one of your friends like tell you? Oh, we can chat about this more. But I thought maybe it could totally be a different friend. But I thought I was like, okay,
I don't know.
Like before Christmas, but like after. Like
I could have probably, I bet I was assuming that it would happen before Christmas because I had also told him I did not want to get proposed to on like a family holiday or like a big commercial holiday. Like I didn't want that. I was like, it needs to be like random. Like I do not want like a holiday. That was very important to me. I was like, please don't propose to me on Christmas Eve
October
or New Year's.
Does work well though,
for sure,
because then you are engaged going into the holiday season.
Yes.
So then like that's an exciting thing. You get you're seeing all your friends and family and everything, and then you're not asking the like, so like when is it gonna
happen?
Yeah. But instead they're so like, so when's the date? And you're like, dude, chill.
Everybody slow down. Yeah, that was very real. That hit hard and fast. And I was like, I need to breathe.
I've been engaged for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Please calm down.
Literally. No, but so for me, it was just getting engaged. That was my catalyst. I was like, all right, well, I got to get my nails done. I got to go find a girl. And I found Rosie, and I've never looked back.
Yep.
Honestly, I think if it weren't for her, I think I could have seen myself stopping getting them. But because she's so good and she like gets what I like and is very
I think it was like remembering.
Yeah.
You had your set, like maybe 1 or 2 prior to engagement. So you're like keeping up with it.
Yes.
But then I think once you got your little ghost nails.
And that's what I got engaged in. And I was like, this is everything.
And I think that's when you're like, these are really cool nails. And you were like super excited because I remember you're like, okay, so like I think I might, because at that point you're engaged, it's done. You could choose to like not keep going, but you did.
And props to my mom and sister. They watched me get that ghost on my nail, knowing that I was getting engaged a week later, and they said nothing, which they shouldn't have because I wanted that ghost on there, and I don't regret that one bit. It was perfect. It was perfect, especially very on brand for me. So, but they could have said something and been like, oh, like maybe like don't do the ghost, but they held off. So they did a good job.
No, that's good. That's good.
but that is our little nail update.
Yeah, just because like from the pod perspective, it looks like we've always been,
but we have not
nail girlies. But like only in the last like 3 years,
it's still fairly
which we've
new.
established we're a lot older than 3 years old. So like there's a lot of years, and I am a little bit different than you in that I have been a nail girly. Yes, I've just always been the girly that like did them myself,
which is so fun. And I will say this is slightly random, but very on topic, but like a lot of people, I'm seeing more and more people DIYing their nails lately.
Yeah, for me it's not worth it to do it strictly from a time perspective.
Yes, I would agree.
Because if one hand's cooking, I can't be working on the other one if I'm going gel, which makes sense if you're wanting it to like last for a while, if you're going to spend all that time. Yeah. So like for me, it takes about an hour plus driving time, maybe an hour and a half tops, you know, I'm like, that is worth paying what is my eyes a premium, right? To get your nails done by someone, especially if you want like a cutesy design and everything. Even though I'm sitting there not doing anything, it's an hour of time for me to just like
versus it would probably take you 2 to 3 to do your own.
Probably 4 or 5 hours. I've seen people if you're doing like a design.
Well, especially when you have to do your non-dominant hand, like that's
and you can only do one at a time, and then you gotta like go back and forth, and then you're shaping them or whatever. Like that. Like I have so much admiration for anyone who can do it, but there's a reason why I just went like regular nail polish. I'm like 20 minutes, right? Does it chip in 2 days? Absolutely. Yep. But it only took me 20 minutes. So like that seemed worth it. But now you're telling me I can spend an hour plus some money. I get that.
Mine lasts 4 to 5 weeks. Yeah. I stretch it out.
Like a month. Yeah. I go about once a month. And so I'm like, that's worth it.
That way too, money wise, you're only like using that expense like once a month, because like my mom goes every like 2 to 3 weeks for the most part, and I'm like, I can't do that.
Yeah. That's and it's an investment in all the equipment and everything too. So true, you have to have the space for it and the time for it. Anyway, so
it's a whole thing. Yeah. Whole thing. But nails are fun. We just haven't always been into it. So it kind of made sense.
We do have a reptile topic though.
We do. We swear. We swear.
We're like Ren Fair, nails.
We've got all the different things. But today we are talking about something that we unfortunately have a lot of experience in a weird way, because we've just had so many situations happen. But what happens when you have to give your reptile medication?
Yes. So we did our vet story time and like we made the note of like, okay, we'll circle back on like tips and tricks for medicating reptiles.
That's a whole thing.
This is exclusively our experiences.
Yes. If I could put a giant disclaimer in front of you guys, we are not exotic veterinarians. I don't know if we have told you that enough times. I feel like we say this anytime we talk about anything medical. We're like, please see a proper veterinarian, because it's not us.
So please consult your vet for like how to administer the medication, because maybe it's different for your species or the type of medicine or like the injury or sickness that they're dealing with. But we will happily share our experiences.
Totally.
You can tag along. This may be educational, may be interesting. It may prompt like some questions or things for you to keep in mind if and when, hopefully not, you ever have to administer medication for your reptiles. But it's a thing.
It's a thing that happens.
And it's way different than taking your dog's pill and wrapping it in cheese.
Bro, so different, because you can't always entice reptiles to eat things.
No. And they're inherently defensive animals, right? Like that's just how they're hardwired. Like I think your dog sometimes knows that you're helping them. Yeah. They don't feel good. Yeah. And you have a different relationship. Reptiles, I think maybe sometimes they can tell that.
I will say, like, I definitely have had several experiences. Like with Barney, I swear, and we'll get into all this, but I think over time, sometimes they can get it, but a lot of times they don't.
Yeah. And if you have one that's just like a naturally defensive, normally, you know, you do have the advantage if they're not feeling great, they're likely not as feisty or defensive because, again, they're not feeling great. But we can talk through it. So there's like injectables, there's orals, there's ointments, there's like different things. Yeah. I think both of our experience up to this point is exclusively lizards. Do you have anything for your snakes?
I have not had any snake situations. And if I'm being really honest, that's actually something that I dread ever happening one day, because I don't know how I would handle that personally.
Yeah. So we can only speak to what we've experienced, right? Which is going to be lizards.
Currently lizards.
Hopefully lizards. We don't have to have snake experience.
Fingers crossed, man.
Yeah. But maybe like one thing that I can kind of talk on is orals. Like,
and I think that's probably the most common as well. So, I mean, I've had oral situations too. That was actually my very first experience was oral medication with Barney.
Yeah, mine was also orals. It was like a round of antibiotics because Neptune had like a very small amount of like parasite, that had like popped up. So they just wanted to like nip that in the butt. And they're like, yeah, so just like grab him and then just squirt it in his mouth. And I'm like,
hold on.
I'm like, have you met Neptune?
Hello.
Also administering by yourself versus having someone to administer with
Totally
you.
different.
Two different approaches, two different strategies, and we can get into that as well.
Yes.
But at the time, it was just me. So I'm like, there's no way that's happening. So what the vet ended up suggesting is actually squirting it into a worm.
Yes.
And so the two worms that I found worked best were hornworms and waxworms.
Yeah, 100%.
Do not try and put it in a roach.
Or a superworm.
Or a cricket. Anything that really has an exoskeleton.
Yeah.
And what's kind of funny is when you do it in a waxworm because they're so little.
They're so little. They get
just
chunky.
Go, and they just swell up. So just be mindful of like how much you're squirting. Because you may be better off with like
a hornworm.
The hornworm.
I would probably say a hornworm is like the best option because it's got more volume.
I feel so bad though because they wiggle and I'm like stabbing the little worm.
That's
but then
actually
it's gonna be eaten, and you can tell it feels it,
Oh, that's actually so heartbreaking.
I'm so sorry, little wormy. Not that the worm had a great fate to begin with, but like I feel like I didn't need to stab it. But, but that ended up being a game changer.
Yeah,
though. That is assuming, though, that your reptile still has an appetite. Because they could get to a point of sickness where they don't have an appetite. But then it goes back to what I was saying before. If they're not feeling great, then you're probably in a better position where you could kind of like open their mouth, and then like inject it.
That was the situation I was in. My first experience ever with like any type of like medication was with Barney, so also a chameleon, and he was so lethargic. What had ended up happening, and I think we've shared this in other episodes.
Yeah, we did the vet story time. So feel free to check that out for some context.
Yeah. So he was incredibly lethargic. It ended up being an environmental situation in an old apartment, but at the time I didn't know what was wrong. So we had taken him in and all this stuff. And so what I had to do was obviously with chameleons, if you can get them to gape, which they can do if they're defensive, and then you just kind of like squirt it in. That's another method of doing it that's specific.
Also have done that.
Specific to chameleons, but it also can work with like blue-tongued skinks too, because they'll sometimes gape and hiss at you, so that can work as well. But Barney was not a gaper. He was not defensive at all, especially when he was sick. He was so lethargic, so quiet, so it just like chill. He wasn't doing anything, but he also wasn't opening his mouth, so I could not get it. And for whatever reason, I had never heard to put it on a worm or anything, which in hindsight is crazy. But at the time, I would place him on my knee with both my hands, and I would take my left hand and I would hold the temples of his head. Yep. And then I would take my right hand and I would start pulling on his gular, like under his chin, and I would just kind of pull until he would start gaping, and then I would very quickly scramble because I was also alone at the time doing this. Yeah, I would quickly scramble and I would get the little like medication and I would pop it in really quick, and then I'd be like, "Okay, you're good."
I'm like feeling traumatized just like watching you describe that.
It was very traumatic.
Also, trying to do that with literally any of my chameleons besides Luna, would go horribly wrong. Yeah. Horribly wrong. They would not just like chill on my.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't even get them to get on my knee in the first place.
But this is why like Barney and I like bonded so well.
Oh, absolutely.
We did that. That was I want to say he was 10 to 12 months old, so he was like just at about a year. And so it was like very early, and I had gotten him when he was 4 months old. I had only had him for like 6 months. So this was like very new.
Yeah. And only your second reptile, right? First time going through like this whole process.
First time I had ever taken a reptile to the vet.
Yeah.
Like that was, and there's a lot of other story times that go along with that. So check out that vet episode. But that was very traumatic and very terrifying. Hey girlies, we are so excited to share that the Pangea Reptile team was nice enough to hook up our podcast listeners with some discount codes for some of their top products. The first code is ECO-Girlies, and it gives you 20% off of their brand new Eco Silicone food dishes in any color.
The second code is Wild-Watermelon, which gets you a free sleeve of small biodegradable cups with the purchase of watermelon-flavored Pangea Gecko Diet. The last code is Wild-Halogen, and it's for anyone who purchases any Reptile System Eco Halogen bulb, because then you'll get 20% off a 2-pack replacement filament.
All of these codes will be listed on the screen and are limited to the first 100 customers who use it. By now, you've heard us talk all about Scratches, the social app that helps exotic pet owners like us find their people.
You can add photos of you and all your scaly babies, set your filter to reptiles, and start scrolling through your local pet parents who get it. Think of Scratches as your way of avoiding the ever-looming "so do you have any pets?" question. Whether you're looking for friendship, romance, or someone who can pet sit your critters, your community is just a new match away.
Download Scratches today and start connecting with reptile keepers in your area. Available on iOS and Android.
We're so excited to introduce the Reptile Girlies to our favorite reptile-friendly coffee and tea brand, Cold Blooded Caffeine. Our favorite thing about them is that they donate 5% of all their proceeds to wildlife conservation to ensure reptiles and amphibians have a place to call home in the wild, as well as in our homes.
And if you know me, you know I'm obsessed with herbal teas. So for any of our fellow tea lovers, they source some of the highest quality loose leaf teas in the world.
Cold Blooded Caffeine offers a wide variety of coffee like their Rainforest Blend, single origin options, and collaborations with some of the biggest names in the reptile world.
For 25% off your first order, use code WILDTYPE at coldbloodedcaffeine.com. And along with that came a different type of medication, which is eye drops.
Yep, so I had to do eye drops with Neptune. This was related to the impact injury of breeding Neptune and Venus, and his eye swelled up and eventually closed shut. So I had to do 2 eye drops. The good thing about that situation is that he couldn't really see out of that eye.
Yeah.
So, like, he didn't see me coming. What was hard, though, is if he wasn't facing with that eye, there was 0 chance.
No,
like if he was
not
up in his enclosure with his good eye, he's like,
absolutely not.
You think you're getting that little eyedropper?
You're not coming anywhere near me, lady. Crazy lady.
But chameleon eyes are cool because they do have like the little turret, and so you can like drop it in there, and it does well. So I feel like eye drops with chameleons aren't
pretty easy.
Aren't terrible.
Yeah, no, and so at the time, like I said, we didn't know what was wrong with Barney yet, and so but he was closing his eyes all the time and he was lethargic. So they offered the pain medication, which was oral, and then the eye drops to hopefully help with whatever was going on with his eyes. Turns out none of that was needed. I just needed to move out of that apartment. But it was a great bonding experience.
Yep.
So the one after that I had was also an eye issue. So very similar, but it was an ointment that ended up working. And I think it was an antibiotic ointment. So there are a couple different kinds of ointments that I personally have used, which is the antibiotic ointment, but then I've also just used regular Neosporin without pain relief. So you don't want the pain medication that's in the Neosporin, but the one that comes without it, I used that briefly when Barney got his little burn along his back. I used that for a little bit. And then with Scooby, my Chihuahua gecko, I used the antibiotic ointment on his eye. He had a weird little like crystallized spot. I think just some kind of weird bacteria had ended up in his enclosure. And so he had like a little weird spot on his eye. And so every day I had to take him out and I had to put him on my little hand and I had to hold him down with my thumb and I would take the ointment. I would, and some people use like Q-tips and things like that. I personally didn't want the fibers of Q-tips getting stuck on his eye or anything. So I just squeezed a decent sized chunk on my finger and then held him down with my thumb and went just like dotted it right on the spot on his eye. And then I would just let it sit there. And I would watch him and make sure that he wasn't like licking his eye. And I would make sure it would sit there for a little bit. And it cleared it right up within like a week or two. But that was another weird little like ointment situation I had.
Yeah, I had an experience with orals. This is also like Neptune's whole injury situation, and it was I guess an oral medication that like didn't taste good, and so like they really do best if you flavor it. And like you can flavor it chicken or beef.
That's so freaking bizarre.
I'm like, for my insectivore,
yeah, for the one that eats the bugs,
I'm like, you don't have hornworm flavor?
Yeah.
They're like, chicken or beef? And I was like,
yeah, the world is just catered to all the cats and dogs out here.
I'm like, I guess chicken. I don't
know. When you first told me that, I was like, what? And then I was like, oh, it's because it's usually for dogs and cats. That makes sense.
They're like chicken or beef. And I was like, chicken. So, and Neptune was naturally defensive. So I would just kind of like wave my hand and then squirt it in there. But But yeah, the injectables are also a whole nother thing. There's different types of antibiotics.
Yeah,
like this is when it's like so outside of our knowledge.
I don't even remember what exactly the ointment was that I used. I don't even know.
But what I can recall is that the injectable was like faster acting.
I do remember that.
And you didn't have to do the injectables every day. The orals you had to do every day. The injectables were like every 3 days or something like that.
Yeah.
For Chameleon, for this antibiotic, for this situation, like please don't say like, oh, well, she said please don't. Just sharing.
Repeat of the disclaimer. We are not exotic veterinarians.
Just sharing. My vet was like, your options are daily oral, every 3 day injectable.
And you were like, every 3 days is way better.
Depending on
your
the
comfort
animal.
level. Yeah.
For Neptune, the daily orals were the better option because I'm like 100% confident I can get him to gape every single day.
Yes.
I don't have high level confidence that that's going to be less stressful than me grabbing him and having to like inject him.
Yeah.
Now you have Venus, who also needed antibiotics. She is not a naturally defensive. Well, she is defensive, but she just like turns and hides.
She's a hider. She's not a
gaper.
Yeah.
Right. She'll just like kind of like cower or like run away. So I was like, okay, for her. And because of the severity, she had literal surgery. So, like, they wanted the injectable. Like, I don't even think they gave me the option for orals for her just because of the severity of, like, it was an open wound and, like,
it was very scary.
Everything else. And so that's when I hit you up because I don't know. I would have figured out a way. I would have figured it out. But, like, to do that on my own.
Bro, all I have to say is I'm very grateful that you had me because I don't know how you would have done it. I couldn't have done it alone. I don't know how anybody could do that alone unless you're a literal vet tech or something. Like
and watching the vet techs do it, they're like such pros.
Oh, they're like boom, done. And you're like, what just happened?
Like, this is why you're the professional.
This is why you're in charge.
So for Venus, they wanted it like right where her elbow, like her shoulder and elbow meet, like right in that little part of her arm.
Yeah.
And they're like, in alternate arms, if you do her right side, then you got to do her left side. And so like you literally had to like prick her. And so this was kept in the freezer and then you had to like thaw it out. And it was like measured little needles, basically, or syringes, right? With little teeny itty bitty needles. And so I elicited like your help and I was like, okay, one of us has to hold her down and the other one has to stab her.
Who wants which job? Which job sounds funner?
Both of which are absolutely horrible.
Horrific. Frankly, we are trauma bonded from that experience because that was rough.
Every 3 days.
That was so rough.
Every 3 days.
And it was for like 2 months. Yeah,
yes.
It was a long time.
I kid you not. So they gave us the first round, which was probably like a good 2-3 weeks, right? So that was like 10 shots or something in that time. I go back for her checkup and they're like, yeah, let's just do a whole nother round.
Let's do one more round. And we were like, are you kidding me?
Not even for myself though, but for you. Because like you literally have the rest of your life. And like, yes, we do live near each other, but you still have to like, stop what you're doing.
2 to 3 times a week is kind of a lot.
To come over, stab my Chameleon.
This was also when I was like very depressed as well.
This is really not good.
Wasn't a good time, guys.
So when the vet said that, I was like, really? And they're like, yeah, that's what we recommend. And I was like, okay. I had to text you.
I remember getting that phone call. You were like, so we're not done. I was like, no.
I felt so bad. Oh, it's such a big ask.
No, but it's one of those things where like, I would never be like, yeah, I'm too busy for that. Are you kidding?
And if roles were reversed, I would be there in a heartbeat.
Of course, yeah.
For one of your critters, no doubt. But it also, just like...
It wasn't fun for either of us. Like, you didn't want to be doing that on your own either. Like,
no.
That was so...
Because like, what you can do is the technique you suggested where you kind of like grab behind their head. That's probably the best option because then they're not going to flail around and whatever. What we opted just because...
And this was how the vets showed you to do it too, right? I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, and because she had a fixator, right? So it's like this wooden...
It was basically a stick.
Sutured.
It's sutured on
so
her
it's
jaw.
like if you grab her, then you like run the risk of like bumping it or touching it or whatever. And so they gave us this like little soft cloth basically.
It was like a microfiber cloth or
so I would get her out on a stick and she was like in a sterile enclosure. So it was like super easy to get her out because it wasn't like dirt and plants everywhere, you know. So I would get her out on a little stick and then on the count of 3, I would basically ambush her in like a like a wrestler, just like from the bungee, like who just like jumps up and just like body slams the other wrestler.
No, she got like body slammed with a soft cloth.
Which I feel like, I mean, there's worse things to get body slammed
there's
with.
way worse things. But
and then I would basically pin her to the ground.
And then I had to scramble and take I had to be like ready with the needle. Because it was only a matter of time before she like wiggled her way out.
Yes.
And so I had to be ready, and then I had to grab her little arm and be like, and I had to do the actual stabbing.
Yes. And like reptiles are very bony,
very
right? They're
bony.
not fleshy.
There's not a lot of,
it's like skin,
not a lot of meat on
bone,
those bones.
especially a chameleon arm.
Especially chameleons,
right? Super bony.
Yeah.
So you would do it, and I like had to find the balance of like how much pressure do I use to like keep her safe and steady, but not so much that I'm like squishing her.
Yeah.
Because we had to switch sides. So there were some days where her fixator side was up against the ground.
That was like whole part of it that we had to be like, which side did we do last?
Yeah. Was it the side that looks like Frankenstein? Or was it the normal looking
which
side?
one? Yeah. Ooh.
So like tips coming out of that in hindsight would be to like make sure you have a person that you can trust, have your routine. Like we didn't switch roles. It wasn't like one day I would stab her and you would hold her down.
I was the stabber, period.
And so I felt like that, like, and I feel like after 3 or 4 times, we were
so
like
good.
very in sync.
I think like the first time or two, it took us like a good like 30-40 minutes to like really figure it out.
Well, when we had to like hype ourselves up.
We were so stressed.
We had to like give ourselves pep talks.
It was, that we needed those pep talks.
Like, go.
Yeah, it was.
Like, I think one time you missed her arm.
One time I missed, and I was like, no! And then I had to like scramble and like fix it. It was a nightmare. Oh my God.
So I would say it was like 3 or 4 times.
Yes. But then we got to the point where I would come over. It was like a 10-minute job, and we were in and out, and we were done, and it was solid. So like we really got our groove on there, but it took a while. Yeah. But the reason that my job was the stabbing was because I had done it before. And we had kind of talked about that when we were like discussing which role we were comfy with taking. And I had previously had a time where I was injecting antibiotics into Nilla. And I still don't really know what that situation was. We thought she might have a respiratory infection, upper respiratory infection, because she was making these weird kind of like hissing sounds when she would hiss. And so I took her in, and our vet basically was just like, let's give her some antibiotics just to clear it. She was like, but she did an x-ray and it was all fine. But so she didn't see an infection, but she was like, let's give her some antibiotics just in case. So it was the injectable, and on a blue tongue skink, that was interesting because if you know anything about blue tongue skink scales, they're very different than like chameleon scales. I would argue that chameleon scales are almost more just like their skin. You know, it's like it's a little bit tough, but skinks have like armor essentially. So with Nilla, and I had to do this by myself too. I had to take the needle and I had to maneuver it under one of her thick scales, kind of like in between the two scales, because their scales are literally like what you would expect, what you kind of think of like fish scales, the way they kind of like overlay.
Yeah.
And so you had to get it, like if my little fingernails, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it, but I would have to get in between and under the nails. Or the scales, and I had to do that, and it was not fun. And
they can feel you like messing around.
Oh, I'll cry if I think about it too much. She would squeak every time. No, it was actually it was horrible.
None of my reptiles have made a noise.
No, Nilla squeaked. She's after the first few times she stopped squeaking, and then it was a little more normal. But I had to give them to her once a day. It was not an every 3-day thing. It was maybe I'm just traumatized. Maybe it was every 2 days or something. I don't remember, but
that's hard too, because they're like, as a precaution or just to be safe, like, let's go ahead and have you do this super traumatic experience for both you and your reptile.
And I'm like, I still, if I even think about the noise that she made, I'll cry. Like,
and that's what's so hard, because you're like, do I really need, like in the instance of Venus, she needed it.
Oh,
she literally had
there
surgery.
Was no doubt.
Like she needed her pain meds. She needed her antibiotics, like no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But when they're like, so there was just like a little uptick
thing
and whatever. So let's just do a round of just to be sure. And you're like,
okay, I'll just be sobbing.
It's like hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
And the like
and the stress and the trauma,
yes.
but it is usually worthwhile.
Oh, 1,000%. This is in no way me like saying don't do it.
No.
I'm just complaining because like
we're traumatized.
Because it's just not a fun situation.
No, it's the worst.
Yeah.
Ugh, it was. So with Nilla, I had to do that. And so what I would do is I would hold her kind of like how people hold like bigger like monitor lizards, which is you get her head in between two of your fingers and then your thumb and your pinky kind of like hold her her little tiny sausage legs back. And so you kind of put like, I would put her head in between my pointer finger and my middle finger. And then I would like kind of trap her little legs in between my pinky and my thumb. And then I would kind of hold it like that with her tiny little leg. It was so sad. Oh my God.
They are really little sausage
They're
legs.
so tiny. They're teeny tiny. And so, but I had to do the same thing of like alternating sides because they can get a little bit sore from the needle. And so it was the exact same spot above the elbow, like right there. So,
but I have heard other vets like suggest like the front arm, the back arm, the back arm, the front arm, this spot. So that's very much where I said like follow your vet's directions because maybe it's dependent on the medication or the species. For both of us, it was the front arm alternating in that like upper arm bone spot, but like very much do whatever your vet says.
I know also because I remember when Nilla had those, one of the suggestions was like if you can't get her arm, you can also do her tail. So like there's definitely like a lot of different variations there. So always
it makes sense if you have like an arm injury that you wouldn't then be putting it in the arm.
Right.
But
so they all have different spots and you know, it could change depending on medication or injury or like whatever the case may be.
Yeah. It's truly my least favorite part of owning reptiles.
No, it's the worst.
The medication piece of it.
The worst.
You can't talk to them. You can't soothe them. You can't coax them. You can't like there's zero communication with them.
They have no understanding of the situation.
They are naturally defensive animals. It is like a very hands-on thing for a pet that you typically are not hands-on with. Or if you are, they're like climbing on you on their own free will. You're not having to like it goes against everything you're taught as a reptile keeper. You have to grab them. You have to hold them. You have to poke them, prod them. Like you have to open their mouths up. Like it is like such a gut-wrenching thing and you're doing it because you care about them and you want them to get better.
But you also know that they don't know that.
No.
It's awful. It's truly awful. This is why I dread it with the snakes because at least with lizards, like I know and I know my snake's movements too, but snake movements are just so much less controllable.
And there's just more of them.
There's more length.
Like there's just more to them.
Yeah, so fingers crossed I never have to do that with Tarzan. I'll lose my mind. I don't know how
when
I would
got
handle
comments
that.
fecal and they're like, it looks good. I'm like,
thank God. Oh,
so the last thing I want to do with like a brand new, chameleon is to like have to like poke him or get him to open his mouth or whatever.
The worst.
Yeah.
Ugh. I think those were all of my experiences. Were those all yours?
Yeah. Eye drops, orals, injectables.
Yeah.
Done it all.
Oh, I did have one more actually that I just remembered. So back when I had my 2 satanic leaf-tailed geckos, this wasn't medication, but she did have an open wound from a surgery. And because Drusilla, satanic leaf-tailed geckos are so teeny tiny. They're like 3-inch lizards. And so they didn't want to put a stitch on her wound after her surgery because it was just going to be too much of an issue. So I had to flush it out with saline every day.
Oh, I can see that. Yeah.
So it was similar to the injectables where it was like a little syringe, but I just had to like hold it near the wound and like squeeze it out and just flush anything out to make sure it stayed clean and wouldn't get infected.
Yeah.
So not necessarily medication, but that just popped in my head. I forgot about that one.
Yeah. One thing to mention maybe in just like medication is like their enclosure as well. You may need to put them in like a hospital bin type setup or something that's
quarantine
sterile.
Setup.
Yeah. Especially if they have open wounds.
Yes.
So like Venus, I kind of alluded to it. She was in a temporary enclosure. We talked about this, like the impulse purchase, how you have things so you can do it. So literally she was in surgery and I said, say less. So I just like whipped up a whole enclosure for her with just like fake plants, branches, and like nothing else so that you're decreasing the chances of infection. So just be mindful too. Like if you're going to
Yeah.
spend all this time and money, like make sure their enclosure
Yeah.
environment is also
This is-
conducive to their healing process.
This is one of those situations where like bioactive and naturalistic enclosures are like not great in these situations because it can potentially lead to getting any type of infection and stuff like that. So hospital bins, quarantine bins. For me personally, I always keep, and you can check this out in my moving stuff on, I've got a whole little like folder of like moving TikToks. And we'll do an episode about moving eventually too. But I always keep tubs. And I keep those for if I have to move, if I have an emergency situation and I need to throw them in tubs and put them in the car, like for potential fires. Like I have a closet full of Sterilite tubs that chill. And those are also my potential quarantine tubs. Worst case scenario, if I need to put them in a tub for a few weeks, I can have that set up really quick.
Yeah. So just good to think about as you're like
Plan
making
ahead.
sure you have a vet and like familiarizing yourself with like different techniques that you may have to do. Like this is all just, and you'll cross that bridge when you get to it. And it's very, injury, sickness dependent, species dependent, but just like.
And your vet will give you all the guidance you need. But hopefully this kind of gave you a little more info and a little prep from somebody who's not an expert and knows what it feels like, because it's not fun.
Nope. It's terrifying. And if I lived closer to my vet, I would have just brought them over every single day to do it for me.
Literally same. I wish that was like the option. But you know what else is terrifying? To easily
segue. Yes.
I'm getting better. I'm getting better at my segues.
This is very well done.
Thank you. Something else that's very terrifying is when you're dating somebody and you're casually dating them, you're seeing them, you're talking, you're in the talking stage, you're in the, I don't know what this is, the casual dating stage. And then it gets to the point where it's like,
you have the talk.
Oh, we got a boyfriend, we got a
talk.
girlfriend, we got a partner. We got somebody up in the mix that's actually official.
The what are we?
The hard
conversation.
Well, and I feel like this also probably dates us, but back in my day, we used to say DTR, define the relationship. Or Facebook official.
FBO. Yeah.
FBO. I haven't heard that in so long. Oh
We're
God.
FBO.
We're FBO. That was such a common phrase in
We're
like
Facebook
college.
official.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
It's complicated.
It's complicated. That was a thing. Oh.
You're like, they changed. It now says complicated. What happened? Do you know what happened?
That was so real.
Yeah.
But having those conversations in like early stages of relationships is terrifying.
Yes. So the question is like, when do you have that talk?
Yeah.
How do you approach it?
Yeah.
How do you know it's like headed in that direction? If you're having to ask yourself those types of things though, then I feel like that's pretty confident that it's like headed in that direction, right? That like enough time has gone by. But no, it's terrifying. Like
I think also the
fear of rejection
the
too.
timeline of it all is very dependent on the person.
1000%.
Because like I'm the type of person, Logan and I were like casually dating for 5, almost 6 months before we made it official. And that was even like, I don't know. I was the type of person that would casually date like non-exclusively for like a good like 3 to 6 months before I was ever ready to commit. I was a total commitment phobe. So I always took it real slow with those conversations. And you wouldn't catch me dead starting that conversation. I would never start it. So I think it kind of depends on like your comfort level.
Yes. And make it known that both of us have only dated guys. So like also interested of how like different relationship dynamics handle it. But like from our experiences, typically it's like the guy that will like approach you or like ask you.
Is why I just said you wouldn't catch me dead doing it. I was like,
which is why I was like,
I was the aloof dater. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna be over here. You do what you want. If you want to make this official, you let me know. But otherwise, I'm gonna be out.
And I tip like in past situations have very much been like, okay, I'll be like talking to this guy, maybe go on a date with this guy, one date here, one date there, just kind of like feel it out. But very quickly they'll become a front runner.
Yes.
And then the other guys, I'm like, not really interested because this other guy is getting like more and more interesting. So then I just organically become kind of like exclusive with the person without officially.
And that's usually how it goes. You get to the point where you're like, all right, you're my number one. I'm kind of done with the rest. Like this is this is who, you see
and
yourself
that's
going
only
further
if your
with.
intention is to want that, right?
Right.
If you want to play the field,
If
play the field,
if you're in your little phase of like doing whatever you want, like more power to you. I certainly had a good 3 years of that, and it was a great time. And I was very much like, I don't want to commit to anybody, which is why when it did happen,
which is why you
it
should
was like,
also, prior to having this conversation, have the what are you looking for conversation, just to make sure, because if you are both looking for something casual, fantastic.
Perfect.
But if one of you is and one of you isn't, then that's like...
maybe we cut that off.
Yeah. But if you're both like, hey, I'm looking for something long term, cool, then eventually something's going to shift and you're going to have to like have that conversation. But I distinctly remember this was like my second boyfriend. Then it did become official, and I was like chatting with my mom, and this was like pre whatever, and I think like he had asked me on like third or fourth date, and I was like, whoa, like that's too soon.
I would have run for the hills.
Too soon for my liking, and like also he was only my second boyfriend, so I was also like
real green, real green on the dating scene.
Yes, and so I was like, so I spent more time going on more dates, and so I was like chatting with my mom. I'm like, how do I like make that decision? And she put it so simply. She's like, well, do you have any interest in going on dates with anyone else? I was like, no. Do you want to keep seeing this person? I was like, yeah. She's like, okay, then sounds like you want to be exclusive, in which case then it makes sense that you guys are...
You love your mom for being such a logical queen.
She very much
really
is. But, and she'll listen to this. And so when we chat about this, she's like, well, back in my day, you just wrote it on a piece of paper. Do you want to date me? Check yes, check no, right? And like that was real. That was it. So like where we are in like this society or season of like choices, right? Yes. Where like you have hundreds of people at your fingertips,
all
right?
The options.
And like dating apps and social media, you just have more people at your
disposal.
I was going to say that, but that sounded bad. So I was going to say exposure.
Well, I said it.
Because I'm like, you're not just like disposing of...
No, I did not mean it that way. Oh my God.
Literally, my brain went, nope. And then you said it. And I was like, well, we're going with it.
Oops.
But, that can be hard, though, right? When you have, like, what feels like a lot of options.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to decide for yourself. And then it's, like, situationships. I've been so guilty of, like...
Haven't we all?
Long-term situationships. And they're like, well, maybe one day. And you're ready for that. But, like, they're not ready for that. And you ultimately come to the decision they're never going to be ready for that.
That's so real.
And then you're like, cool, I just, like, spent all that time. So, like... Go with your gut. If that person's not on the same page with you, then like maybe that's reflective of something else. But it's like whenever it feels right for you is the right time to have that conversation.
Your intuition is everything. Listen to your gut. Listen to your intuition.
And listen to their answers too, right? And take it for face value.
Take what they say at face value.
Yeah.
Truly.
If they say they're not ready for a relationship, don't wait.
Listen. They meant it. They meant it the first time. They're going to mean it in 6 months.
Let us be your like older sisters.
Truly.
When we say this, if they say they don't want a relationship, they really don't want.
Nope. Then on the flip side, though, this can happen sometimes too. And I just thought of this. I wasn't like fully planning on like going this route, but like I had a situation where I had a guy and I ended up dating him for like several years. So like it was very warranted and welcome. But I had a guy who never made it official, never asked me like, oh, do you want to be my girlfriend? Never like anything, just started saying, I love you and calling me babe and girlfriend. And we were like together and I was like, what is happening?
That happens too. It doesn't have to be a formal conversation.
It doesn't have to.
It can just kind of, but eventually you do have to be on the same page.
Of
right?
like, we're not seeing other people, right?
Yes.
Like that's what's going on.
Yes. And if they are saying those things that you also have to be like.
If monogamy is your thing. It might not be. That's a whole other thing we don't know about. Like, all that. But sometimes some people don't want to have the conversation with it.
Yeah, I'm a very like direct, clear communicator. Like to know where your head's at, where my head's at. So like we're on the same page. Yeah. And even leading up to that conversation, I think it's healthy to just like check in of like, okay, is this going well for you?
How are we feeling?
I think this is going well for me. Are we like headed in that direction? Is that something you would be open to? And like that's when you take their answers for face value, because those are going to be honest conversations. And if that all seems to line up and you're like, cool, Let's go on a few more dates, have some more conversations.
For sure.
And just recognize like being boyfriend, girlfriend, literally anything is not marriage, right?
No.
It's not a life sentence. I
No.
think a lot of people think having commitment
people take it so
and
seriously,
exclusivity of
including
like
myself.
that you're like, this is it. You're set for life.
Yeah.
But like, even if you weren't official with titles, you would still give this person the courtesy of having an uncomfortable breakup conversation, even without titles. So if that's what you're trying to avoid, you're not
going to avoid that.
No, because you care about
regardless.
this person and vice versa, that you hopefully would give them the courtesy of like an adult conversation of like,
Absolutely.
hey, whatever, this isn't working out. So like, being exclusive does not mean it's any more serious than casually dating only one person.
Such a critical disclaimer.
Yeah.
Like that's so critical. And also if you become official with somebody and you realize, oh, they're a terrible person, run.
Yeah, you can break up with them.
There's nothing legally tying you.
No.
Run.
And that's the whole point of dating. And that's the whole point of being exclusive. Exactly. Like, hey, I like this person enough that like I want to give this a shot. Whether that works out, fabulous. If it doesn't, okay, right? Then you grow and you move on from that. But just like, I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. Yeah. And like, I think it can be easy sometimes to get in your head about like
it's so easy,
the commitment behind it. And it's
like I said, I was the queen of being like, we've only known each other for 4 months. Ew, you're not my boyfriend. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I was crazy about it. I was very like afraid of the commitment. I thought it was so much. No, my boyfriend. When I was dating Logan, my coworkers they were like, "Oh, your boyfriend," and I would on calls daily. I was like, "He's not my boyfriend."
No, but it's like I see all the time with couples when they become fiancés, right? That fiancé.
That's so weird. It's for sure.
Whatever. But yeah, I don't know. That's just our 2 cents. But like, we always love hearing from you guys, especially your like how you met stories, like all that. Like, so let us know, how did you guys like have that conversation? Was it a conversation? Was it cute? Note slid across the table, or did it just Juliet kind of happen? Yeah, and you're just.
Or did all of a sudden he or she just start calling you their partner, and you're like, guess
we're doing it.
Okay, because that's happened to me too. So
there's no one way
to
do it. There's no timeline. It is whatever feels right for you. And just because you did it one way in a past relationship does not mean you have to do it that way in a future relationship. Every person, every like place in your life, dynamics that you have, level of comfort, level of honesty and communication is going to be different. So just like enjoy it, have fun.
At the end of the day, just listen to your gut, listen to your intuition. It's never going to steer you wrong. My personal opinion.
That is incredibly true.
Yeah, it's never going to steer you wrong. She's solid in there.
That's what I'm saying. Take what they say to heart and listen to your gut.
You'll know when it feels right, for sure.
Oh,
but
good chat.
I know. It gets a little bit of warm and fuzzies, but also like the nervous butterflies too.
I'm also like, make good choices.
It does very much feel like older sister vibes.
Yeah, seriously.
I know, but I guess that rounds us out for today.
I'm good.
So hope you guys enjoyed, and we can chit chat with you guys in the comments. Let us know. We want to hear all the things, all your takes. How long do you usually wait to have those convos? Have you had any medicine experiences with your pets?
Yeah.
Fill us in on all that good stuff. But otherwise, you can check us out at the Wild Type Podcast on all the socials. You can find me everywhere at Lyssa's Lizards.
You can check me out at Neptune the Chameleon.
And we'll talk to you girlies later.
See ya.